Good afternoon. I'm going to share my work, The Feminine Cultural Constraint of Maternity in Susana March Poetry. My name is Claudia Panisello. Definition of the topic. This paper is aimed at studying Susana March poem My Son Has Grown This Summer from 1953, which shows the position of herself as an object in crisis with the traditional feminine model. The select topic is linked to the research I have carried out for several years on women's writing. This thesis addresses the analysis of a female discourse related to the motherhood. The interest is the importance of the female biological being and the writing process of the female voice in a historical perspective of the issues. The subject will be investigated with a lyrical genre written by the Spanish Susana March, who lived between 1952 and 1990, born in Barcelona, Spain. Consider the position of Aliances in the laughter of the jellyfish she maintains about women's writing. It's currently impossible to define a feminine practice of writing. It is an impossibility that will last since the practice can never be theorized and close codified, which does not mean that it does not exist, but it will always exceed the discourse governed by the phallocentric system. It has and will have a place in fields outside the territory subordinated to the philosophical theoretical domain. Development. There has been an historical evolution of the complex concepts that mean the definition of feminine identity, the female subject, and what it means to be a woman. The essence of the feminine being has a central root related above all the motherhood and the division of the task between the gender. In this sense, women have historically been in a situation of inferiority respect to men. Susana March poem. My son has grown this summer. My son has grown this summer. He puts his hands on my shoulder and says, "Look, I'm almost as tall as you." He still gets a steep climb, but soon he will be as tall as me and higher. Soon I will be the one who will have to stoop to kiss him on the cheek. Soon I will no longer be able to say those childish things that mothers say to their children. Call it my son, pretend to be surprised as for any act of yours, wrap up him in at night when he's already asleep. Soon I won't be able to tell you those stories that you like so much, the heroic deeds that I meant when I was young, because he will answer me, if you are a woman and the women, they do not commit heroic exploits, and I will feel before your eyes all the sad blush of my sex. I will never be bold, no big, no friend, or migratory birds and taciturn sailors. I will go back to being who I always was. A woman dissatisfied with being a woman and with everything, because the only one in this world who saw me big, he will have outgrown me. Developing. I divide the word for its better analysis into different levels, following Lodgeman's parameters in structure of their test. Paratextual level, the title, structure, and rhyme, lexical level, and intertextual semantic level. Paratextual level, the title is repeated in the first verse and the first stanza, and the notes, the external facts of child is growing, and the main thing openly proclaims a dissatisfaction for being a woman, related to the growth of her son. The poem is structured in 3 stanzas of different size, each using a free verse that is to say without respect to the metric or conventional measure of the verses. The absence of rhyme predominates in the original version in Spanish language, with assonant rhyme in some of the verses. The poem has a lexical level close to the colloquial, since there are no words foreign to the everyday and understandable. There are not many metaphors either, but a simple language that is easy to understand for any reader. At the intertextual semantic level, various subthemes can be identified in relation to the central theme of the child's growth announced in the title. In the first place, the topic of tempus fugit is linked to the maternity and the feeling of loss due to the growth of her son. On the other hand, it seems that this maternity only converted the child's childhood and did not continue for the rest of his life, since a feeling of loneliness and sadness is perceived, and at the same time she expresses her anguish directly with the same dissatisfied with being a woman. The first moment's first stanza refer to objective confirmation within the real world. The natural growth of the son has surprised both the mother and the son. The use of the present perfect composed of the indicative so has grown this summer, which confirm an objective reality. In the second moment, second stanza, made up of only 2 long verses, close to the prosaic, the intimate atmosphere of a common and daily experience shared by the majority of mothers and their children were perceiving the natural growth. The third moment is found in the third stanza and is the one with the greatest semantic content, since it elaborates the intimate impression of what is described in the previous stanzas. Maternal power seems to fade with age, since she will no longer be able to speak honestly with him. Another lost power, which reinforces the distance between them, is indicated later by this. This is a sense of otherness, which Simone de Beauvoir defines as follows: in the eyes of men and for the legend of women who see through their eyes, it is not enough to have a woman's body, not to assume as lover, as a mother, the role of the female, to be a woman. Through sexuality and motherhood, the subject can claim their autonomy. The woman is the one that is accepted as alternative. Simone de Beauvoir, the category of the other is as original as consciousness itself. She points out that from the most primitive societies, the ancient mythology, the duality between the concept of the same and the other, later this quality is transferred to women, considering that the women are not born but are made. Through the cultural guidelines that give them utterance to gender, she points out the importance of alterity in the different collectivities. Not collectivities even defined as one if it does not immediately place the other in front of itself. Maternal love is often lost in reprimands and anger, dictated by concern for maintaining a well-placed home. It is not surprising that the woman who is torn between these contradictions very often spends her day full of nervousness and acrimony. In this point, there is a strong sense of anguish linking to the growth of her son. She perceives herself as a stranger. Her son will become a man, and he will consider her as a woman, incapable of practically forgetting in her imaginary speech that she is his mother. Her motherhood and joy for a little one seems to end at the end of the childhood, as if motherhood expired at some point of the child's evolution, implying a regression for her. Following background and undoing gender, the norms that govern intelligibly identity, that is, that enable and limit the intelligible affirmation of a self, are partially articulated on matrices of gender hierarchy. They operate through the repetition. When it is affirmed that the subject is constituted, this only means that the subject is the result of some discourses governed by norms that make up the intelligible measure of identity. The adult that his own child will become part of the group of men. I will no longer be there, no Greek, no friend, or immigrant birds and tacitus sailors. It seems to be the absolute end of all imagined danger between her and her son, as if motherhood were temporary and limited to an only short period of time. childhood time. The projection of herself in times after the enunciation indicate a future state of reiteration of herself prior to motherhood. I will go back to being what I always was, a woman dissatisfied with being a woman with everything. She transmits the most absolute desolation at the first exclamation that closed the poem with explanation, because the only one of this world who saw me big will have grown than me. It means the loss of complicity with your child and at the same time the loss of meaning within your world due to the passage of time. Her role as a mother seems to have ended with the growth of her child. It is an external look that seems to forget the complicity with her son and is so convinced of the value of being a reproductive woman that she is not capable of autognosis. This alienation from herself prevents her from altering that point of view. The position of subject woman is, in the discourse sense, the intellection of herself as an object woman, signifying an adherence to the androcentric positions. It is assumed only in a reproductive function. This point of view is surprising for women born in the later decades of second half of the 20th century, because the way of considering motherhood was no longer in force. The intellectual affairs is crossed by an assumption of cultural construction that sadness her and plunge her into an existential void. In this point, sex becomes a reification and not a freedom, and I feel before your eyes the sad of blush of my sex. Should the babbling and doing journal, this that says about a subversive repetition. The main task of feminism is not to create a point of external view, to consider identities. This would be equivalent to the construction of epistemological model to stop accepting its ontological position. Shana Benaviv said the importance of being the self. In this point, being in itself is not built autonomously. Conclusion: motherhood is a power, being able to be fertilized, being able to conceive a new being within oneself, being able to be the baby first vital space for growth, being able to give birth, being able to breastfeed the baby, being able to care for him, being able to pamper him, being able to educate him, being able to raise him, to be able to grow him, to be able to give affection, to be able to share, to be able to play, to be able to enjoy as well, to be able to enjoy his achievements, etc. This accession of powers should be considered historically as something positive because it is obvious that it is so. The desire to control and diminish women is what has changed the positive into the negative, the lofty and sacred into something unpleasant. The responsibility before these powers is undeniable, and it is feminine feat to be able to have everything under control. In this poem, although it's a position as a subject is being structured because she is recognizing the feelings within herself, but those feelings are crossed by the position of herself as an object. That is a perspective of the other and not of her being. The poem doesn't transmit an autognosis of her situation around motherhood. Her position arose and confirms the other essence and does not build an identity of the female subject outside of that position. It is significant that she is not considering her political discourse as a literary task, which beyond maternity also dignifies her as a woman. The asymmetry between the genders is unconsciously maintained as power within her discourse, where she sees herself annihilated by the assumption of learned construction. There is no deconstruction of the posture of external vision of herself as a reproductive object in a poem. On the contrary, she affirms this point of view and experiences it as an inexorable reality. The disagreement with the traditional feminine model is exposed, since the lyrical subject dares to expose his feelings in a poem with regret and anguish. And deep now, although they endorse the position expressed above, they are nevertheless announcing as a need for church, that the construction of the subversive repetition defined above is necessary, since a woman is not only a reproducer, but motherhood is a situation that goes through the psychic, physical, but has a metaphysical scope which transcends age and lasts throughout lifetime. Thus, the need for a break with a traditional female model that assumes a maternal role limited to certain very limited parameters, voting capacities, and its duration is manifested. Good afternoon. Thank you very much.